Call our October 28th Board of Trustees meeting to order.
May I make a motion?
Yes, please.
Can I move to approve the agenda with one change, moving item 9A to the consent agenda?
And I actually have a motion too.
First of all, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Oh, send it or not? Will you send it to me?
So I apologize, but can I request that we amend the agenda, amend the motion?
Okay.
I think, did we correct the fact that the executive agenda has A through E, and then when you come out, it's A through C, and the titles don't match? So we need to clean that up. Executive session has A, B, C, D, and E, but possible action on executive session, C is mislabeled. And I still think we need to come out and say that we took no action on the others.
Okay, go back to the beginning again.
And then I want to see.
So you want to add 5D and E? To
Yeah,
match?
and we'll just clean it up when we come back out.
Okay.
5D and E.
So I will
Yes.
accept that.
And I've got them.
And can we pull 12C, the employee compensation first reading, out of consent? I have a question about the language.
Pull them all out.
Okay.
I have a question.
All right, so let's start back from the beginning again. Moving item 9A to consent, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's been moved and seconded. Cindy, you're asking for a friendly amendment to?
And I'm going to ask that we vote on that because I don't think 9A should be moved to potential consent. Mainly because it doesn't match the original goals that were presented to us in August. And we probably want to talk about why that changed.
Added D and E under.
Well, it's hard to maneuver the agenda
Okay.
because we're being asked to vote, so it's hard to kind of go back and forth to see what.
And I have a question to from back.
Okay, just once.
Got off of there? No.
Take which one?
With the voting
To move
thing in
item
front, you
9.
can't now scroll back through and see what's being suggested, so you need to pull the motion off of the computer for a minute.
Okay.
Exit out, and it won't let me.
All right,
Right, because it's once you join the meeting and it pops up on your screen, you
All
can't
right.
toggle.
all right, let's go back to the beginning, please. Thank you. If we're ready. Item 9A to be moved to consent is properly moved and second.
And then you can change your vote later.
And that's the only thing we're voting on with what's on our screen?
Has it, yours already popped up? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which, what popped up is we approved the agenda with that being the only change. Is that what we're voting on right now? Or are we voting on the change?
Has anyone voted on that motion yet you have? Julie, can you, well, you can click on change vote and make it repopulate.
I just unvoted though, because I clicked.
Yeah, just click on change vote in the upper right-hand corner and it should populate it back again.
Back there, so you're giving us hand signals.
Can we just vote on, I'm confused about the executive session items. I know too, our information I don't know what I'm doing with which you don't want.
All right, we'll do it.
But I can do the moving 9A to consent. Would that be possible?
That's fine, we can do that. And we can come back.
I thought somebody didn't want 9A on.
Right.
No, you took it out,
And you
didn't
vote
you?
no.
No, well, it's already been moved and
So the
seconded, so we
motion,
have
so
to
the
vote.
motion on the floor is to approve
Hang
the
on.
agenda
Hang
moving
on, guys.
9A.
You have in front of you the adoption of the agenda, approval of consent items, motion to move the item to 9A to consent. That's what's before you. That's what we're going to vote on at the present moment.
I have a
If
question
you're
on
not
that,
in
sir.
favor of it, then you vote no. If
So-
you're in favor of it,
Question.
you vote.
And I do have a parliamentarian question.
If you're in favor of it, you vote yes. If you're not in favor of it, you vote no. What's the question?
So what you're asking us to do is approve the agenda with this change only, and if it passes, there can be no more amendments to the motion on the agenda. That's what you're saying. This is the only amendment you'll allow us to vote on.
That's what's before us.
Yes, sir. So being that, that section 11, I think, puts consent agenda, it's mostly all policies. Actually, whenever we have a policy, I'd rather those not fall under potential consent unless we're going to vote on them in a separate motion. I don't think we should approve any policy by potential consent vote. When we adopt the agenda, let it be separate. Not that I disagree with the policies. I don't see why we should approve that with the agenda that we approve in policies A through G.
Okay, duly noted. You have the motion before you?
Hold on there.
He already said he did not accept it.
Oh, he said he did.
She just never came to consent.
Todd,
Yeah.
you did not accept that amendment that Cindy gave, correct?
Correct.
Right, he did not
Now,
accept it.
If a friendly amendment's not
Yeah.
You said you
accepted,
did.
it has to be voted on whether the amendment is added or not.
Yeah, it can be voted on.
No, we didn't.
I'll second it.
So I'm going to pull it because we're all confused, but when an amendment is not.
No, we're not confused. The problem is, we're not confused. The problem is that everyone is trying to add in their decision or their liking as to what should occur. And when we have all of this going on at one time, then everybody gets confused. That's why we have what's called, you make a motion, you second it, we discuss and we move forward. But when you have everyone else adding everything else, this is where we end up at. So this is where we're at right now. So the question before us is the motion to move item 9A to consent.
However, that's not the motion on our computer screen.
That's the motion.
You gonna let me finish? Is anyone gonna let me finish?
It is.
I'm letting you finish.
Adopt agenda.
I already voted.
You asked for a friendly amendment, correct?
What I asked now was.
No, listen,
Go back to what
you asked for a friendly amendment. I'm going back to the beginning to clarify where we are.
Okay.
You asked for a friendly amendment, correct?
And I said that I did not want 9A put into potential consent, and I wanted it voted on as an amendment as well.
But you did not make the original motion, did you?
No,
And you did not second the original motion.
no.
And
So
Todd did
therefore, I'm
not.
not allowed to request an amendment to the motion? I'm asking the parliamentarian.
It's voted on. If he doesn't accept your amendment, then after it's voted on, you go, if your amendment, now you have to vote on whether the body accepts.
I'm willing to move 9A to before the special report, if that would be,
Special report. Special recognition meeting?
right, before special recognition, excuse me.
You're willing to move what?
9A to, before special recognitions, if it needs to be discussed.
All right.
Who's seconded?
Second.
You good with that? Okay.
Should we go to change vote
Second,
again?
please.
You're gonna vote this motion down?
Well,
No.
I need a second.
no, Kate
Kate.
did the second.
Good change vote.
Kate,
middle pump.
Darby seconded that motion.
And I, the first time, and then I agreed to make that change.
They're going to take it.
Move to adopt the agenda, moving item 9A to after item 5C.
To after item 5C.
All right, you've heard the motion. Are there any questions in reference to the motion as
Can we
stated?
make, can someone propose an amendment to the motion? That's the question.
Yeah.
Mr. Hollingcheck?
Question. So he just made the motion and seconded. Your motion is still up on the table. So we still have to vote on your first motion, then go to the second motion, correct?
No, you go in, you go
Amendment.
second, then first.
The ladder
Second, then
down.
first.
Let me come first, yeah.
Got you, thank you.
You're welcome.
So can an amendment to the motion before us be made?
Amendment to Todd's new motion.
But look at the motion on the screen.
Hasn't
Can someone
populated.
ask to make an amendment to that?
Yes.
But why do that if you already have a motion made by Todd and it's been seconded?
Because she doesn't like that motion.
Well, I think that's why we have a parliamentarian, so he can explain why we're allowed to do
Well,
it
that's
or
what I was
not.
asking.
Right. Because I think that we should move the employee compensation out of potential consent. The language in it is confusing, and I would like to discuss it.
Okay,
How are you gonna accept it?
make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Now, the body can vote on whether to accept that amendment.
You want to discuss the employee one?
Which number is that, Cindy?
This number?
12C.
Okay.
So does she have a second?
Somebody gonna second her amendment?
I second it.
Already did.
You want to pull it or discuss it? So you want to discuss it or pull it?
Discuss it.
Exactly.
Where you want to place it,
Second
Cindy?
amendment?
Already seconded.
Kevin did it.
We all clear?
So my original question, that's not what's on our screen. What happens when we vote? What's on the screen?
Give her a second.
Okay, so we're going to take that off.
For the third motion,
No.
because that would
This,
board
that's an
docs.
amendment to his motion. Can you just read the amendment and then everybody can vote on it, please?
It is to adopt the agenda and approve the consent agenda items, moving agenda item 9A to after item 5C. The amendment is then to move 12A off consent agenda.
So I'm going to pull my request for the amendment, and let's just vote on the motion that's here.
Oh, we're waiting on.
Reverend Collins and Ms. Darby.
This one on the screen?
Yes.
This is Reverend Mack's motion, this is the second one.
It's Mr. Garrett's motion.
Has everyone voted? Reverend Collins?
Mr. Hollenshed.
Mr. Hollenshed?
She withdrew it, so.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Second, are there any questions about the minutes? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. That motion passes. Entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Moved.
Fine, let him go.
We'll now reconvene into open session.
Minutes last, Lord, yeah.
At this time now, we'll have a moment of silence. At this time now, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today, we take time to acknowledge the loss of several members of our CCSD family since our last meeting. Today, we remember 14-year-old Asa Sharpie, who passed away earlier this month. He was a student at our Turning Point Academy program. His services were held on October 11, 2019. We also pray for the family of 10-year-old Cabaret Lucas, who was a CCSD student who attended Stono Park Elementary School. She was laid to rest on October 19, 2019. With sadness, we mourn the passing of Glenn Steigman, former CCSD Chief Financial Officer, who retired in 2017. Steigman was a longtime school financial officer leader and supported CCSD during a very serious time in our district. Steigman's services were on October 14, 2019. And finally, we pray for the family of West Ashley High School student, 18-year-old Aiden Goodrich, who passed away on Friday, October 25th, 2019. Once we're made aware of these services, I will ask that Ms. Erica Taylor share them with the board. Console these families, Lord, as they grieve. Give them your strength, Heavenly Father. Remind them of your promises. Comfort them when loneliness strikes and they feel lost. Heavenly Father, these families need you. And as I may recall in Revelation 21:44, and it says, "And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, no sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things pass away." Amen.
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 At this time now, we'll entertain a motion to 5A item, executive session.
I have a motion. I move to approve the site lease agreement with Milestone Tower Limited Partnership for all site locations approved by operations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved in second. We ask that you, are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. I'm sorry?
I think Reverend Collins can't,
I can't get into the 4 o'clock meeting.
I think he can't join them, he's having trouble.
Can't join the meeting? Okay, we'll take your vote electronically until you're able to get in.
We're
We're not in the same meeting, Pat? Oh, yeah, we are.
Oh, you did.
What I mean is, I can't pull the agenda up for this meeting.
You want some help?
That's 1:30 to 3, it says.
Oh, that's executive. Scroll down here.
This one?
Keep going. Keep
Okay,
going.
this one.
Nope, scroll. Right there.
Let's see. Oh, you got all one.
Okay, did you,
Okay, I got it.
did you get a pop-up box
I didn't vote.
to vote?
I didn't
Okay. All right, has everyone voted, Julie?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that motion passes. Item 5B.
I move to approve the forwarding of a formal complaint to the South Carolina Department of Education related to the attached contract teacher.
Properly moved in second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. For information purposes for the community, item 3D that's listed on the actual printed public outline will be item C that we will discuss, that we will be voting on in public at this moment. Is there a motion?
I move to authorize the superintendent and staff attorney to engage outside counsel for the purpose of initiating litigation regarding vaping and e-cigarettes.
Second.
Properly moved in second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. That motion passes. At this time now, we have special recognition.
9A.
Oh, not yet.
Yep,
9A.
9A. Okay.
Move to approve the percentage targets for board goals.
Second?
So I have a question for the superintendent. In our August meeting, you presented some percentages of growth and achievement, and they've been lowered for this proposal from August to now. Is there a reason for that?
I think that the reason is, if I recall, in August, that's before the students actually came back and we had the 10-day count, so we gave some preliminary numbers, and then we used the same kind of calculation after the 10-day report. And the change in the number represents the actual student achievement. You asked a little while ago if student achievement follows the student or the school, and the actual answer is both. It follows the individual student, but it also backs up to the school and then aggregates to the district level. So the difference was between the projected based on preliminary numbers and the actual based on student count and the report results for each student.
And so, and I kind of assumed it would be related to a percentage of students, but I was a little shocked to find out that one of them drops by more than 3%. One goes from 69.85% of students in the ninth grade will achieve at or above their reading and math, and then now the goal becomes 66.4.
The same calculus was used. The difference is the calculus in early August was based on projections of students and scores, and the calculus used recently was based on actual students and scores. But the multipliers were exactly the same.
Okay.
So this is just a growth number based on top of that?
It's a growth
Okay.
number based on
Where they are
growth
actually,
is
Well, no, I'm
actual
talking
plus.
about, I'm
Okay,
not
got it.
talking about the growth goals changing. I was
Right.
talking about the achievement goals changing.
Right, roger that.
The growth goals also changed.
Okay, is there any further questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion passes. Item 6A, special recognition.
Good afternoon, Chair Mack, Vice Chair Darby, board members, superintendent, and guests who are here with us this evening. Recently, Charleston County School District saw a significant increase in overall ratings of our schools. The number of CCSD excellent rated schools increased by 4 from last year. The number of excellent and good schools increased by 7. Our average schools and above average schools increased by 9 from last year, and our unsatisfactory schools dropped from 14 to only 3 this year. There were 25 schools that were named to the South Carolina Department of Education's Palmetto Gold and Silver Award for their academic performance spanning over the last 2 years. Now, most recently, board members, our principals were honored at their meeting for these accomplishments, but we would like to recognize the fearless leaders who support our principals and the learning communities. So I'd like to ask Ms. Cindy Ambrose to come forward. Mr. John Cobb, please come forward. Ms. Michelle Simmons, please come forward. Dr. Jennifer Swearingen, please come forward. Dr. Joe Williams, please come forward. Ms. Sharon Randall, please come forward. And Ms. Jennifer Coker, please come forward. As they're coming forward, I'm going to begin reading some quotes that were shared with us today about each of them and the commitment and the support and the thanks that the principals for whom they support have. So one principal shared this about Ms. Ambrose. She said, Ms. Ambrose's commitment to growing and supporting our school has been instrumental. Her feedback about data and her support of our mission has been key to our success. Thank you. For Mr. Cobb, thank you, Mr. Cobb. You've always been available to listen to the challenges that we face at the school level in an effort to problem solve for our students and our community. We appreciate you. For Ms. Michelle Simmons, it says, Michelle Simmons is a consummate professional who is consistently working to support our schools. She's laid out her charge for the school, and she matches all of her principal skill sets with the needs of the school. She's very explicit in her analysis of data and clear about her goals for each of her schools. Dr. Swearingen makes herself available at all times by phone, text, or email. She is a master at providing feedback, observations, and suggestions in a way that is supportive in a manner that is in the best interest of all students. Dr. Swearingen inspires me to be a better leader. For 3 straight years, Dr. Williams provided a level of support that not only played an instrumental role in my school's success, but also in my personal and professional growth as an educator in CCSD. I have always and will always consider Dr. Williams an inspirational role model, someone I will forever admire and look up to. Ms. Randall, thank you for your support in assisting our students with the experiences that will prepare them to be leaders in all of their future endeavors. Another principal writes, because of her high expectations and assistance, CCSD high schools rise to the challenges, perform, and reach our goals. And Ms. Coker, the Department of Alternative Programs under her direction has been beneficial by providing intensive intervention and support to those students who need that type of support. Our climate coach is always on hand to help ensure that we are on track with our PBS model and are staying the course for maximum student growth and performance. Now, we applaud our principals, our educators, and our students, but tonight I'd like everyone here to join with me in applauding these leaders for the work that they do for Charleston County School District.
Okay, if y'all could look right this way, please. 1, 2, 3. Let me just take a few. To the right, good, perfect. All right, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Mack. That concludes my report for tonight.
Okay, at this time, we'll have the superintendent's report, given that the individuals that have signed up tonight for public comments are for non-agenda items, so we will move forward with the superintendent's report.
So that'll be item 11.
Item number 11, correct.
Thanks.
All right. Item 8A, superintendent's report.
Yes, sir. Copies of documents are coming around so that board members will have a hard copy. It's difficult for you to see the screens. So the first thing I'd like to mention is the vetting of the solicitation for interest schools that came forward. We had 9 proposals, and we think 5 of them we can vet internally fairly quickly. I'll talk a little bit more about those in a bit, but we would like some assistance in vetting the 4 that are from outside the district. Or there 3 are outside the district. 1 is an entity that we've not worked with in the district. So in that vetting process, we need to include parents, educators, other expert community members. And in your packets today, you had a letter from one organization, Charleston Rise. And someone from Rise is here today, I believe, perhaps Natasha Jefferson, to address the main points of that letter.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Natasha Jefferson. You all may know me from being at all the meetings. However, those who do not know me, I would just like to give you a little background. I am a part of Charleston Rise, which is a grassroots organization of parent advocates. I rise because I do have 3 children who are a part of the system, but unfortunately, we are a choice family, and we do travel 100 miles a day between my husband and I to take our children to schools that fit their needs. However, I rise because there are several children who are unable to make that same journey that my husband and I make on a daily basis. So therefore, we know that the urge to fixing the schools is a necessity, and for us to get that by all means necessary needs to get done. And when it comes to choice, my children want to have the choice of going to a school for the sport that the school offers or the mascot that the school has, not necessarily for academic achievements. But with me today, I have 3 ladies who are a part of our provider review team. They go out and they seek providers and do the research on them. But before I introduce them, I would love for anyone who is a part of RISE to please stand so they know you're here. And I believe we have some in the overflow room as well. But we are here and we are willing to help. First, you'll have Charmaine Wilder.
Okay. I got to use my cheat sheet. Greetings all. My name is Tanae Williams. I'm the Wayland Neighborhood Association President and a Charleston Rise Alumni Cohort 1. I rise because I have a grandson who attends Edmund A. Burns Elementary, but that's a story for another time. I would like to share with you that in the summer of 2018, Charleston Rise was approached by a third-party operator who was interested in opening a school in North Charleston. We researched the operator and ultimately hosted 2 community meetings to introduce the operator to the community and to give the community an opportunity to understand what the operator could bring, both positive and negative, to their children. Charleston Rise then made a trip to Baton Rouge to see one of the schools ourselves. It was an amazing learning environment. It was also interactive and engaging. I can still hear the Friday afternoon chant that they do. It's Friday, it's Friday, now what you gonna do? So with that said, the children would then share what they're gonna do for the weekend, usually read a book, do extra homework, and things of that nature. Almost a year later, I'm thinking, if they made a lasting impression in my life, I'm envisioning the positive impact they are having on their students. From this work, we knew we needed to form a team to specialize in researching providers, and the provider review team was developed. We knew the necessary requirements would be to do research, deliberate, and the need to ask informed, often tough questions. After carefully reviewing all that is entailed in ensuring that all children receive a high-quality education, we created a rubric of effectiveness indicators to evaluate school operators. To date, Charleston Rise's provider review team has taken the time to identify and research 12 of the top high-performing national providers, and we were concerned that none of them have responded to the request for information you released. We would like to reach out to the operators we identified and ensure they have seen the request for information. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Charmaine Wilder. I am also a part of RISE. As you know, Tanae and I were in the first cohort together, and there's a lot that we can say. We have a short amount of time to address these needs. What I wanted to share with you is the members of RISE, as members of RISE, we're beyond.
Yeah, just step up a little bit.
Closer to the microphone.
Closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now? No. Okay. So as members of RISE, we're beyond.
Ms. Wilder, if you can just wait 1 minute, let us get that corrected so we can hear you.
See if the mic's plugged in. On here.
Plug in.
Yeah.
Can I be heard now?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay. So, yes, thank you. So as members of RISE, we're beyond grateful and extremely overjoyed with the fact that the district is exploring new educational opportunities through new providers. The idea of bringing fresh, innovative experiences will really empower our children, and experiences will be awesome. They will lead to success for our students, and that would actually be outstanding for the Charleston area. It is essential that the providers in the selection process have a record of educational growth as well as gains, because it's essential to student success. We, and when I say we, I'm speaking of the entire district, need to provide educational experiences that will embrace the entire child, the whole child. And the goal here is to graduate, not if, but when they graduate, that they're prepared for the world. They're prepared on a local level, they're prepared on a state level, they're prepared on a national level, as well as international. The current list of possible school operators needs to be expanded. Those are our thoughts from part of the provider review team. And what it can do, what we can do, again, as a district, is explore, research, and try to pull in some of those providers that we found that are doing great work within the country. And what we want to do, as again, as a district, is provide excellence to our students, because that's what we need to do in order to compete in the world. As a district, we don't want to be average. Average is on the top of the bottom, and we don't want to be on the top of the bottom. Excellent is what we're striving for.
My name is Jean Howard. I have grandchildren in Charleston County, and I'm a CCSD District 9 constituent board member and an alumni of Charleston Rise. You have been presented with the background of Rise, the work Rise's provider review team has done over the past years, and the excitement Rise has for innovative schools coming to Charleston County. On Monday, October the 14th, at the Committee of the Whole meeting, Dr. Postaway announced that this board would be creating a stakeholder committee to review the provider application received to date. On behalf of 150 Rise alumni and fellows, I respectfully request that 5 Charleston Rise members be invited to participate in this stakeholder committee. Charleston Rise alumni will bring informed voices of the parents, grandparents, and caretakers to this committee. An additional recommendation was made at the Committee of the Whole meeting on October the 14th to extend time to accept provider applications through December. Rise also supports this decision and would like to reach out to the operators that we have researched and ensure that they have seen the request for the application. Rise proposes 5 members be accepted to the provider review team, stakeholders committee, and encourages the extension of application through December, so CCSD and Charleston Rise together can encourage and review other operators to come to Charleston. A response to Charleston Rise from the superintendent and board of trustees for these 2 requests is desired by November the 1st. Thank you very much.
That was part of the superintendent's report in terms of the community's interest in helping to vet. And the second part of that particular item dealt with having a round 2. I think we need to close out round 1, proceed with round 1 so we're not held up, but go ahead and accept solicitations for interest through December. We already have 3 individuals. One has submitted an application. That particular entity has expertise in helping set up teacher residency programs, and we've talked with the College of Charleston about perhaps helping to vet that one. But it's not on here for a vote. I'm just telling you that's probably one of the recommendations we'll be bringing back to you at the November Committee of the Whole meeting. And then the second part of the superintendent's report is an update on board priorities. That's where I'd like to go now. It's in 4 parts. Why, again, are we doing this? The feedback summary from the meetings that we've had, what we're doing now, and what we currently are expecting to bring to the board on November 11th, so that everyone who's interested in these matters has some preview of what is likely to be coming to the board. We're still working daily on these recommendations, but we wanted to make sure that people had a preview. So let's talk about why. One of the basic reasons for the existence of public education is to make sure that when students leave us, they have more viable life options available to them than they would have had they not been with us to start with. So our mission, our main goal, is to help young people be ready to step into productive pathways in life. In our region, out of every 100 students, 85 will be graduated from high school. Of those 85 who graduate, 60 will be career ready. In our region, 40 of every 100 young people are not ready for the jobs that are available to them. 43 students will be college ready. So when we think about what needs to be done to make sure that more children are ready, we absolutely have to think about breaking cycles of poverty. According to the Chamber of Commerce, we're the 74th largest metro area in the country, but we rank in the top 5 for job growth. 34 net new people are either born or move here every day. The 2018 Talent Demand Study shows that 35,000 new jobs will be available in the next 5 years, and the preponderance of those are high-skilled, high-wage jobs. That's 1/3 higher than the 2016 projection. And yet, look at the gap between the percentage of children who are ready and the jobs that are available. We have to do better than this. On top of this challenge, we know that we are in a situation where our revenue cannot keep up with our needs. So we have to operate differently than we have in the past. We have to achieve efficiencies wherever we can and increase effectiveness across the board, not just in academics. Our kids need to be academically ready, but if you look at the employer reports from this region, they talk about being able to work with others on the job, to disagree in a civil manner, to help solve problems, to collaborate, critical thinking, people with people skills. This requires a system that is coherent and is working across all communities. So that encapsulates why the board started on this journey to start with. A quick summary of the community listening sessions. Following the September 16th meeting, we developed slides for each constituent area, and the board held listening sessions in each area. There have also been some coffees with the superintendent and staff. We've met with some parent and educator representatives and will continue to do that. The following slides summarize the main themes. You saw this slide on October 14th. I put it in here just in case someone is here tonight who wasn't here the 14th. The Minnie Hughes community members are opposed to combining the 192 Minnie Hughes students with the 362 E.B. Ellington students at the Ellington site. Mitchell, Buse, Charleston Progressive Academy, Memminger, all the downtown schools like their schools as they are and pretty much oppose change. Some parents have privately offered some thoughtful alternatives. As a reminder, last time we had eloquent speakers about the fragility of some communities and the ecosystems that exist among educators, social workers, community members, faith-based groups, and so forth. There are some concerns about some of the partial magnet recommendations. There's some opposition to and some misunderstanding about what we were calling the partnership schools. We're now referring to them as acceleration schools. And several parents and educators asked that we reconsider the concept of putting multiple middle schools on the same site. So those were the recommendations back, or the feedback that you received back on October 14th. In the past 2 weeks, we have more feedback to present. The first bullet has to do with Lang Middle School in particular. Several District 2 families have been rezoned multiple times in recent years. The D2 Constituent Board tried to separate feeder patterns, schools into feeder patterns to feed into Beckham and Wando High School. Those parents are asking that if partial magnet changes have to be made, that we pull Lang off the list for at least the time being until the students who've already had to change zones get to matriculate through those schools. North Charleston and Jenny Moore School of the Arts both have attendance zones plus service partial magnets, so the feedback is that perhaps Ashley River Creative Arts Elementary could have an attendance zone and continue to serve as a D10 partial magnet. That would make it consistent with the others. There's some sentiment in West Ashley to establish a more equitable feeder pattern by creating a sixth grade academy at West Ashley Middle School and placing all of grades 7 and 8 from D10 in the C.E. Williams facility that will open in August. If we do that, both the arts program and the academic advanced magnet could be offered to all of the students in D10. Some partial magnet parents with preschoolers are worried that their siblings would be sent to different schools if younger siblings are not grandfathered in. Parents strongly disagree about whether D2 and D20 in particular should be given priority when enrolling students at Buist. Views regarding the proposed changes to academic magnet admissions changes vary pretty widely. There's some feedback that Academic Magnet is the U.S. News and World Report's top performing magnet school in the country and that no changes should be made. For the most part, though, the feedback from Academic Magnet is that the admissions criteria should change and that we need to improve student preparation so that more students would be ready to enter Academic Magnet. And I'll say a little bit more about that in the recommendations that we're contemplating. Several individuals expressed the view that the top 2.5% from each middle school should meet some sort of readiness criteria to make sure that they are up to the academic challenge and the accelerated pace at Academic Magnet. Buist parents expressed concern that limiting their school to 2.5% of middle schoolers on the first round disadvantages their children who might have been the top students had they remained at their home schools. There's strong support for giving priority to Charleston County residents for Academic Magnet enrollment, but there's a lot of mixed feedback regarding the recommendation that resident students attending Charleston County schools receive priority over privately schooled students. And just so that everyone knows, on first reading, the board approved tonight that we would modify the admissions criteria to give priority to Charleston County residents in some manner that is legal. The board did not address students coming from private schools. In terms of not having equal opportunity, I should say. Community members who've attended some of the sessions really empathize with the board's position, the position the district is in regarding Act 388, the fact that you have funding barriers that you cannot overcome, and they're interested in helping with an advocacy effort if the board is organized and has a plan to present to the legislative delegation. So given that feedback, work underway. We're continuing to refine the Acceleration School Initiative and hope to announce a leader of this effort soon. We've received 3 Acceleration School inquiries regarding the round 2 solicitation for interest, so we recommend that we have one. We're developing budget estimates for these sites that have to open next year. The new Beckham High School, the opening of the North Charleston Center for Advanced Studies and the stadium next year, West Ashley Center for Advanced Studies, which will open in 2021, the opened expanded campuses at Camp Road and C.E. Williams, expanding 4K with certified teachers, providing creative arts programs at Sanders Clyde, and ensuring equity in optimal size middle schools, making
Dr.
sure.
Postlewaite, you skipped a page.
I skipped a page on the
CAO interviews, meetings.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I'll just back up and do that one. I'll finish this one, and then I'll back up and do that. And we're studying the impacts of merging schools with enrollments of less than 500 students. We know that that can't always happen and that there will be some exceptions. So let me see where we are now. Thank you, sir. Okay, here we are. Some other work underway. We're continuing to refine the Acceleration School. Oh, I said that one, so I missed. What did I miss? The CAO interviews. Thanks. So we're almost, we will be finished, we hope, with the Chief Academic Officer interviews by the end of the week, and we anticipate bringing a recommendation as early as next week to the board. We will continue the meetings with parent and teacher representatives to discuss and receive feedback on the suggestions about some of the most significant proposals. We met with the College of Charleston team, and we're proceeding with plans for the advanced academic programs to be located at West Ashley High School for students in D10 or D20. We'll bring the board a recommendation regarding the Buste grade configuration and the second location at the November 11th Committee of the Whole meeting, and I'll say a little more about that in a minute. We're working on the Buste entrance criteria for kindergarten as well as additional classes in grades 2 through 8, and we plan to have these recommendations ready for November 11th. We're refining the academic magnet entrance criteria. We've identified the top 2.5% of the 8th graders who would benefit from a bridge program to see if we could help them be ready for those who are not ready, would be ready for academic magnet for this coming year. But in future years, if we go with that 2.5%, we need to start identification earlier, by end of 6th grade at least. We're developing a plan to house hot gap 5th graders at their home schools next year. We're searching for a location to combine several Montessori middle schools into one campus in order to provide better curricular offerings for Montessori 7th and 8th graders. So now, let me get to the possible recommendations that we may bring to the board in November. These are related to the board priorities. The first one, improving preschool and family engagement programs. Convert Mary Ford to a center for preschool and kindergarten, that would be ages 3 through 5, and family engagement in 2021. Propose a new Ladson, likely on the Ingleside property. We've talked about this. Converting the existing building at Ladson to house an early childhood and family engagement center, to do that through the penny sales tax referendum. We're proposing a new combined elementary school for Lambs, Goodwin, Hunley Park, and then converting either Goodwin or Hunley Park to another early childhood family engagement center with penny sales tax. As the 5-year Head Start grant sunsets, we have to start rewriting that grant next semester in January. So we want to consider all the options for 3-year-old programs, including working with community providers to sponsor Head Start. In the future, for the programs that we provide, we will use certified teachers in our preschool programs. If we need any board policies, we just put a reminder on here with all of these priorities to make sure we look at board policies, because we've run into some situations, as you know, where we have multiple board policies and we have changed one of them and not others. So we want to make sure we keep the board policies up to date with what the board wants to, the actions the board wants to take. The second recommendation has to do with creating optimal size schools in order to provide better access to high quality, equitable program offerings. So we're proposing a new school, a new elementary school in District 9, and that would be with the penny sales tax referendum. We are proposing to combine E.B. Ellington and Minnie Hughes for next year so that we can provide better offerings to more students. As I mentioned, we will be studying the impact of combining, merging, rezoning the schools with fewer than 500 students within the next 3 to 5 years. That's not to say that we would have the study completed by November, but we would have a study completed within this school year regarding which schools we think might benefit from combining. We know that there are some exceptions, like Jane Edwards, St. James Santee Elementary, the Montessori programs, and probably some others. There are some small high schools that aren't listed here that may need to have exceptions. Again, we would examine board policies if they need to change. The third board priority was to provide greater access to high-quality programs. We will bring, as I mentioned in the budget analyses, we'll bring a recommendation to provide equitable honors course offerings in the middle schools that have enough student attendance to make that possible. We'll recommend making Hot Gap a true middle school serving grades 6 through 8 effective this coming year. To be clear, we'll maintain the advanced academic program at Hot Gap with open admissions for all D9 students so that there's not a cut number with a certain number of students in and then other eligible students who cannot get in. We will consider creating a 6th grade academy at the West Ashley Middle School campus and a 7-8 middle school at C.E. Williams, as I mentioned. We'll recommend that we create the advanced academics program at West Ashley High School with open enrollment for eligible students in D10 and D20. Ensuring fair representation of our diverse student population in special programs. This is particularly pertinent to magnet schools at Buste and Academic Magnet. Revamp the programs for the gifted where necessary across the district. Serve at least 5% of the students in grades 3 through 8 in all schools. And we see how important that is when we're thinking about changing Academic Magnet to the top 2.5% from all the middle schools. We should not have a middle school in the district that doesn't have 2.5% of its students ready to enter Academic Magnet and meet the current academic requirements. But we'll have to step it up in some of our gifted programs in order to do that. On the table, we continue to have the recommendation to expand by 1 class per grade the number of seats at Buste. To do that this coming year. Right now, it looks as though the best option is to locate the Buste K through 2 students at Meminger and locate Buste 3 through 8 at Buste. But as you know, we continue drilling down on those options. That could change, but that looks as though it's the best option right now. We are getting a lot of good feedback from parents, though, about some other twists and modifications to that. Another option will be to revise the student selection process at Buste to ensure more equitable representation of students. We will consider giving priority access to students whose home school's academic rating is below good and to D20 students. We will bring a recommendation to revise Academic High School admissions criteria, creating an early identification process, supporting a bridge program, and implementing readiness criteria for the proposed top 2.5 from each middle school. We received a lot of feedback that we need to make sure that students in the top 2.5% are academically prepared. Thus, the bridge program to help those who might miss the cut by a point or two be ready to retest. And then again, if we need to change board policies, we would do that. Recommendation number 5 deals with the partial magnets, and it will take 2 pages to explain. So the first recommendation is to support the D10 Constituent Board in establishing attendance zone for Ashley River Creative Arts Elementary. The school would continue to serve as a D10 partial magnet. We would phase in the attendance zone beginning with kindergarten. Otherwise, there wouldn't be room for I doubt that there would be room for an attendance line children to come into the schools in the upper grades. We will bring to the December Audit and Finance Committee a budget package to support the arts programs at Sanders Clyde, commensurate with what we do with similar schools in the district. We will recommend the partial magnet enrollment processes no longer occur. They don't seem to be needed as we analyze enrollment and the original purpose of the partial magnets at James B. Edwards, at Zucker Middle, West Ashley Middle, Hot Gap, C.E. Williams, Mitchell, and Meminger schools. We would remove the partial magnet status from these schools effective next year, emphasizing that the programs will remain if they're effective, along with the additional staffing and points. We have not determined yet whether St. Andrews Math and Science needs its partial magnet status. We heard a lot of feedback about that last week, so staff is drilling down on those numbers again. Students who are currently attending a partial magnet from outside an attendance zone would be grandfathered, and transportation would be provided for a year, but we need to monitor those costs as the new transportation contract is developed. We talked about the reasons why we might exempt Lang from this list until the students who've recently been rezoned matriculate through Lang. We would support the D2 Constituent Board in redrawing attendance lines so that Sullivan's Island Elementary has an attendance zone, and that will take them a year to do that. And when that's finished, then we would recommend removing the partial magnet status for Sullivan's Island as of August 2021. And then that would occur consistent with the way we've held the other partial magnet transitions. We would note, though, if Sullivan's Island students get their own attendance zone, we probably can't grandfather in students there for more than a year, depending on the capacities of that school. Effective 2021, create one Montessori middle school for Murray-Lassane, James Simmons, Hersey, and Montessori community schools if we can work through facility and transportation challenges. Parents of the middle schoolers who've given us feedback in those schools are asking us to consider a 7-12 Montessori option and to think about repurposing the vacated space in those current Montessori schools so that we could add additional primary, lower, and upper elementary seats. So that one is still being worked. We don't know if we can find a site, but the principals and parents ask us to look at a 7-12 Montessori option. So as we think about the sixth board priority, we just want to revisit this slide again. 60 students in our region, not just in Charleston County, but when you look at Dorchester, Berkeley, and Charleston County, 60 out of 100 students currently are career ready. In order to change that, we have to grapple with the amount of poverty that we have in our district and the understanding that students coming from generational poverty very often need additional supports. This is another picture of that slide that the NWEA experts showed you earlier today and that we've looked at multiple times across the country. This is the gap that exists, but public schools that are effective close that gap. And so we are looking for effective models with a proven track record of closing that gap and accelerating achievement more quickly than we've been able to do, despite all the different things that we've tried. So the purpose of Acceleration Schools is to increase student well-being and achievement at a faster rate than is currently the case. So those schools receive greater autonomy, but they have greater responsibility. The possible recommendations in November then will be to engage an experienced leader to head up the effort. We hope to have that done, as we mentioned, in the next couple weeks. Identify and bring desired state policy waivers to the board for approval so you know the degrees of autonomy that you would be contemplating for these schools. Designate schools for the acceleration zone and staff each school with a strong, experienced instructional leader who has a demonstrated track record of success. Provide that leader greater autonomy through policy waivers. You heard the NWE experts say that the Chicago strategy has been the pathway into leadership, putting strong leaders in every school, and that they are one of the districts that's growing children the most rapidly of any in the country. We will ask in November that you preliminarily approve the following acceleration school partnerships and request that they submit a 3 to 5 year plan by January 3rd. And these plans differ. Some of them are whole-scale sort of whole-scale change in a school, and others are slight modifications to schools. So Sanders-Clyde and Engaging Creative Minds is very excited about a whole-scale change to Sanders-Clyde. The principal's totally on board, and they've been working together for several months. The College of Charleston and CCSD educators would like to collaborate to build a teacher residency lab. The district has piloted this for the past 2 or 3 summers and recommend that we, in November, let them move forward with developing and bringing back an operating plan. The University of Virginia, Dart and Curry Leaders in Education, and three CCSD schools. That is a proposal, a plan with a really impressive track record. They are not suggesting that they partner in changing schools. They're partnering in developing leaders in 3 schools that are turnaround experts. So that one looks really good. So those 3 we feel comfortable that we have vetted adequately. The following 2 are still under consideration. The Angel Oak Elementary and Arts Now, we don't have a good handle on what those changes or proposed changes would look like. And Metanoia's early childhood proposal is for their old Shakora Elementary site, and we need to make sure that it augments our ECE plans for the Mary Ford area. We just haven't had time to do that, but it's likely that we'll have those finished in time to bring the recommendations on November 11th. On November 11th, if it's possible, we want to give you an update on the committee that will be vetting, and by December, bring the vetted round one partnership application recommendations. We heard from RISE this evening about their desire to have a number of seats on that committee. We don't know a better way to do this. The board has a committee meeting once a month and a board business meeting once a month. We've been talking about a lot of these things for months. We do make modifications based on the feedback we've received when we can, when the feedback is consistent with the direction in which we believe the board wants to move. We cannot make modifications based on all of the feedback we've received without moving off the direction we think that the board majority told us to move in. So we've tried to lay out a preview of what the staff is discussing to bring to you in November 11th, so the public would have an opportunity to do that. If you receive specific questions about where a particular recommendation stands between now and then, if you'll refer that individual to my office, we will give any updates that we have available to them just as quickly as we give it to the board, give the updates to the board. We will update you weekly. If you want to have some other way to have a check-in between now and November 11th, we are open to that. But what we tried to do tonight in the superintendent's report was to lay out where we think we are in terms of the types of recommendations the board majority would be expecting by November 11th.
Okay, you've heard the superintendent's report. I'm going to start from my left and ask if there are any questions. Mr. Frazier?
It's a lot to digest, obviously. Thank you. People would expect me to do this, so I typically go straight to the budget anyway. When we look at the estimates that we're talking about for increased schools, staffing, and then also equalization across the schools so that we're making those offerings, I think it's important we have all of that information in front of us, because to the extent that we are perceived as taking something away, we better have the replacement standing by in a way that looks like it's credible. Historically, the district hasn't always done that very well. And so I would just say that that's an important part for me to look at. All the other stuff equally important, but that's one we have to figure out, particularly knowing what our revenue limitations are.
Right.
So all of this sounds wonderful in some way or another, but the question of how we get there concerns me a bit, because I know we don't have enough money set aside today to do these things.
That's correct. And to be clear, our recommendations in November will all be in consideration of the budget. That Mr. Kennedy and his team are working on the budget estimates. They'll bring them to the next Audit and Finance Committee, but we need to sequence that correctly. So we would not ask the board to take action on anything that hasn't been brought to Audit and Finance with a budget possibility, feasibility behind it.
Yeah, not only the action, but the subsequent reaction that also has to be contemplated. So,
once we do those early outs, we've tied that money up.
right. So thank
Exactly.
you.
Thank you for saying that better than I did.
Okay, Ms. Green?
Regarding the partnerships,
Yes, ma'am.
the recommendation, well, on page 24, are those already at the point that you are going to make those recommendations, or is there another review?
The first three, we think we will have ready for November 11th. We feel good about the first three. We've not included everyone in reviewing them who needs to be included yet. So the Sanders Clyde and Engaging Creative Minds, the College of Charleston Teacher Residency, and the University of Virginia, we think we have reviewed to the point that we can say pretty definitively they will be ready, pending input from a few folks who haven't been able to see them yet. Angel Oak and Metanoia, I'm not sure. It's possible we'll have those ready, but they're not fully vetted yet.
And can we get, and maybe just a conversation with you and I could do this, but can we get some information on exactly what you were looking for with these partnerships as it pertained to each of the schools? I mean, in terms of the background
Yes,
and
ma'am.
what they have done in the past?
Yes.
Do you have some information on that we can get?
We do, and these three, the ones that are listed here would not be, in my mind, the level of partnership that we would be thinking. I mean, we heard the parents who talked here tonight, that the RISE parents talk about operators. We are not seeing these as operation schools. We're seeing them as collaboration schools. We're not talking about turning over a school to the College of Charleston or Engaging Creative Minds or the University of Virginia. So they are a hybrid, I would say. That we're not thinking about any of these five as operators.
Right.
But we would be happy to share with you what we're looking for in the criteria, not only for these, but more importantly for the next
okay.
round.
All right, great, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Hollingcheck?
I'm reading my mind. I just concerned on the and like you said, not the partnership, but how they're going to collaborate with the three schools. As Joyce said a minute ago, what do we expect from them? How the role they're going to play? A lot of things that you put on here that you displayed today is a lot to digest. One of the big things that we need to know, budgetary-wise, how it's going to impact the overall budget. Will it reduce central staffing numbers? I need to know from the time since I've been here, when we started out on central staffing, where we're at now and where were we at 3 years ago? Do you increase the dollar amount tax-wise to the county? A lot of questions, and I'm working on something now that, we just need to know. It's just accountability things that we need to kind of find out as we move forward, that's all. The early childhood program, I think is great. But, there's other things that we just have questions about. I have questions about.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Coates?
Yeah, so I think that there's two big themes coming out of this is, I know that when we went down the road with saying that we were going to do a solicitation, I had kind of expected the board to have an opportunity to discuss as a body the entities. That was something I had said all along, and the reason we did a solicitation, I see now that it's kind of not going to happen that way. But it also said that we would engage parents of the schools. And it appears that we're going to have recommendations brought in, if I'm correct, 14 days, and you're not identifying all the schools yet, so I don't know how you put together a parent group in 14 days. So I think that we might want to look at some of that piece.
Parents will be involved if any school's recommended by November 11th. The parents of that school will know and will have been involved.
And I think you're doing a great job of taking the big things and narrowing them down, but there are some very logistical issues in here. This board was very, very vocal that we wanted universal 4-year-old kindergarten and that we wanted a report on that in December, and that we were not going to approve that kind of budgeting until February, which we see that it's very quickly coming in to approve this center, and those recommendations or demands from the board can't happen because December is not going to come before November. So we need to talk about whether you're including this as universal 4-year-old or is that off the table altogether, and what it looks like for schools that no longer have 5-year-old kindergarten. That's something that was not clearly at our front of mind. So I think those sorts of logistical things need to come November 11th because we're only going to have 7 days to turn that information around into a vote you're going to ask us to up or down. And I think we need to be very cognizant that I think I speak for everybody on this board. We will not take it lightly or well if we are told by a district staff member in February, we can't have that because you tied up the money in November. We have to know what happens now, what that ties us up for in the budget.
We get that, Mrs. Coates. That's why Mr. Kennedy is working on all the pieces together. So
thank you.
We don't want that to happen. Thank you.
Reverend Mack, one more thing too. Just as caution, I got a few phone calls also about, I think you had a community meeting with St. James Santee, people out in Orndale about shutting that school down. Then also, you mentioned in here Minnie Hughes.
No, sir, I did not.
No,
That was not.
Okay, that was
We
not-
did meet out there, but it certainly wasn't about
Okay,
closing
well,
the school.
that's how it came back, but, and then you talk about Minnie Hughes in here. We need to tread lightly on how do we deal with rural areas and how it impacts those rural areas and the vital need to the community. Just trying to recommend combining schools in those areas are really a touchy situation.
Reverend Collins?
Thank you, sir. There's a lot on this train. This train has a full load. That don't mean my train either. But, Dr. Postman, I want to ask you, where does the mission critical plans initially come from? How did it originate, these plans you have together? You presented to the board as mission critical. How did it initially originate?
They came from board goals that were extracted from the strategic plan and the recommendations that have been brought to the board.
Okay, board goals. All right. Where then, where are the academic plans? Let's say you propose North Charleston, for example, Huntley Park and Goodwin and Lambs. You propose combining these schools together, which are mostly Title I schools. So we're talking about moving bodies and buildings and building other buildings or converting buildings to early childhood. What is the academic plan that's going to bring the children forward once you put these things in place? What's the plan we're looking at, the plan of action? Let's say all goes as you desire. I haven't had any discussion of what we're going to do differently, or no matter who's doing it, what they're going to do different, what are they going to do different that we haven't already done?
So I think a lot of the academic plans have already been brought to the board in other meetings. The new programs that are being introduced, a report on which programs are working and which programs are not working. The board has tried a number of, if you look, for example, at the history of Burns Elementary, all the different approaches that were used at Burns. So you have that history better than I do. And then in terms of what we're currently doing in academics, that information's been brought to the board as we looked at the reading scores over the past few months. You asked the staff to bring the new programs we'd invested in, what the return on investment is. We probably could do a better job with that if you would like us to place that on an upcoming agenda, say for January. We could look, if you want to review academic plans again.
For example, the partnerships come in to run a school. And you spoke about waivers a while ago, which I'll come back to that. What I'm really asking for is, what is your academic plan that you've already tried that leads us to go to private partnership or private businesses or nonprofits to actually run some of our schools? What have you put in place that has not worked?
So if you're, I'll tell you what we'd be happy to do. We'd be happy to bring back to you a list of all the interventions that were tried at one of these schools over the past 20 to 25 years. And despite the best efforts of a whole lot of different people who sat in these seats and tried to make the best decisions they could, the achievement of our children is still languishing.
That's exactly right, especially black children. We're way behind. So when you're talking about these changes change up the entire school district, but especially North Charleston. That was the greatest impact, because the most schools at risk to be closed are combined.
I know.
And then if we don't have a plan in place that's going to make a difference, we're just spinning our wheels with plans and not going anywhere.
That's true.
Reverend Thomas, I think that's inaccurate, though, to say that there's not.
Well, just you get your time. Just give me a minute, please.
So finish your question.
I would, but I didn't interfere in your time. I respectfully.
Take any time.
Reverend Collins, go ahead.
All right. So you said you had included the community, but as a board member, I feel like I haven't been included. and the plans for our constituents myself. So if you're coming back in November, recommendations for different groups, Metanoia, Angel, College of Charleston, to present them to the board, is kind of disingenuous at that point to say you include the community and parents and stakeholders. I mean, they should be included up front. It should be included in all the initial plans, because otherwise it's not going to work. If the community doesn't embrace it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Reverend Collins, you have a question?
Yeah. I'll stop after this. It's early childhood. Right now, we're early childhood. We're 40% underfunded. Not underfunded, 40% with vacancies. Don't have enough money to even run the program properly. We have money in our budget, but we're not putting it into the program now. And so the program's not producing the good results.
Reverend
To
Collins,
expand the Mary Ford.
your question?
I'm coming to it.
Okay.
Expand the Mary Ford and Honey Park, other places, with the same mentality and financial spending is ludicrous, because we're not taking care of the program we have now. So what are you going to do differently if the board says yes, turn Mary Ford into the Early Head Start Center? How's that going to be more effective than what we have now? That's my question.
So there are two parts to the answer. One is Head Start is run by the federal government, as you know, and it has its own set of guidelines and restrictions,
yes.
as you know. And one of the things that I talked about was determining whether or not we ought to continue with the Head Start grant, or whether we ought to run our own 3-year-old program and let someone else run Head Start. And I talked about revamping the early childhood program, because we're not getting enough academics to children in our early childhood. They're not coming out ready to read. They're not entering first grade ready to read. So the reason that's happening is the curriculum that we're using is either not focused correctly, not implemented with fidelity, or there are some other needs that our children have that we're not getting at, which keeps them from being able to engage in the learning. So we're revamping our early childhood program. I am not asking to invest more in a program that has not produced results.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Postlewaite, for your report. At this time now, item 10A.
I move to approve first reading of the revised policy.
So where are we?
10A.
So that is the, if I'm correct, that is the first reading of where we changed the policy so the magnet schools are for students who are domiciled in Charleston County, not specific to attending schools,
Residents of Charleston County.
rather than students who have attended schools.
So we're adding a sentence that says, if I may remind, additionally, admission preference into countywide magnet schools will be given to students whose family domicile is located in Charleston County.
I second that.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion passes. Now we'll have public comments, non-agenda items.
Okay, so for our public comments, just want to remind people of what our policy is. We have a timing device right there. We have 2 minutes for public comments, and no speaker may use public comment to discuss personnel matters or matters otherwise private or confidential. Speakers are to address issues, not individuals. And I'll just call a couple of the names, and then if y'all want to just come up and get in line so it doesn't take you too long. Our first is Representative Rivers, then Kelly Lewis. Oh, is it Reverend? Okay. Reverend Rivers, sorry, it says Representative. Sorry, Reverend Rivers, Kelly Lewis, and Jackie Drescher.
Brown?
Nope. It says Representative Robert Rivers is what's on here.
River?
No, he's down here a little bit farther. So, okay. So, all right, Kelly Lewis and then Jackie Drescher. Kelly Lewis?
I'm Kelly.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Superintendent, board members, thanks for the time. My child attends Buse Academy, and I have a couple questions about kind of echoing your comments, Mr. Collins, Reverend
sorry,
Collins.
say again?
I'm sorry, kind of echoing your comment,
Okay.
Reverend Collins, about how you are going to bring forward the proposed changes that you have for abuse, such as moving the children from one school to another with a week's turnaround. How will that be vetted?
Yeah, we
Okay.
listened to your comments.
So that's,
and then we'll
okay,
follow-
that's my concern, is that there's not enough time for that. And it seems like this board is intent on plowing forward with the changes in 2020 was what was proposed in a small group. I don't understand how that can be vetted appropriately and or voted on in a week's turnaround time. My other concern is that there are these proposals that people have made privately. If you're going to propose those, why can't we have that information now? Why is that going to be held close until November 11th and then brought to action so that people can be voted on? And I do think, as you said, Reverend Collins, it's very disingenuous to say that the community's been involved if you won't make those proposals known to parents. Parents put their children in those schools based on the curriculum offered and now are having to kind of work backwards. And it's, you know, everybody wants what's best for their children. You say that the student is at the heart of your work, or even think that, you know, one of the Ms. Green's things was, my question is, you know, is this good for the student? And I don't think that's considered. I don't think that that's been taken into account. It's just these moves to make moves without any real time to study. I mean, where is the time? And that's what I think. If you want to involve the community, you have to provide more than 7 days. I mean, I work. I've took time off of work. I have a 5-month-old to come down here. I can't do that in 7 days' time, make an educated decision. I just ask for more time before you do anything.
Thank you. Is Jackie Drescher, and then after Ms. Drescher is Karen Boster, and then Anthony Bryant.
The Florida legislature has banned the construction of larger schools. Florida statute states small school K through 12 cannot have more than 900 students, which would be approximately 69 per grade. They say smaller schools reduce discipline problems, truancy, dropout rates, and improve student academic achievement and increase parent involvement without increasing administration and construction costs. And regarding the achievement gap, small schools narrow the achievement gap between poor children and their fluent classmates. A series of studies in 7 states found that poor children who attend small schools have higher test scores than those who attend larger schools. By creating larger schools with more students per grade, you're doing a disservice to all of the children. Arkansas did a study measuring school size by number of students enrolled per grade, and the fewer classes per grade, the better. They determined that poverty's power over student achievement was greater in larger schools with more students enrolled per grade. Small schools slashed poverty's power over achievement by 27% in 4th grade math and 8th grade math, for example, and made a significant difference in every grade and every single category. We should also focus on restructuring the 2020 school improvement referendum to make 4K available for all, which will bring up test scores in all schools. A child's brain is like a sponge. They develop 85% of their core brain structure by the time they are 5. We must harness the learning of these children, which will result in better grades in school. Studies show that early education preschool programs increase the likelihood of children graduating from high school, attending college, and becoming responsible adults. I'll email you with my ideas for improving diversity and making special area offerings more equitable, because I'm short on time. But let me help you accomplish the change you want without increasing the size of our school or any other school. We can certainly maintain our national accreditation in CCSD by implementing a diversity plan and funding 4K for all. Sometimes when we combine our ideas, we find there are options we never even considered that meet the needs and provide equity for all children in CCSD and actually satisfy the majority of parents and teachers. And wouldn't that be an incredible outcome? Thank you.
Next is Karen Boster, then Anthony Bryant, and then Marsha Aline.
Hard act to follow there. My child also goes to Buist Academy, and I put him in as a kindergartner because that's the school I wanted him to be at for 9 years. And now you're talking about changing him around, and you proposed moving 6th to 8th grade. That didn't fly, so now we're down to K through 2. And in both of those instances, the overarching thing is that we're doing a school within a school, but nobody can tell any of us what that actually looks like. How are you going to run 2 separate programs in one building and still maintain the curriculum that I put my child in the school for? It seems like you're intent on increasing the admission next year regardless. And as the other parent said, I don't see how, if you haven't decided on what that looks like, what problems need to be solved, how can that possibly be vetted and guaranteed that it's not going to impact my child in years to come if you are just now deciding what to do and implementing it next year. There's no way that it can be thought through as well as it needs to be. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Anthony Bryant, then Marsha Alim, and Jimmy Moore.
Everyone here has a right to petition. The 1946 Administrative Procedure Act of 1946 deals with notice, procedure, effective date, and petition. Everyone in this room can file the necessary complaints to whoever they want to file their complaints to, as far as the Supreme Court if they need to, in terms of you slowing this ball down completely in terms of what you're trying to do. Okay, now you have direct lobbyists, the Chamber of Commerce, other people who have vested interest in this budget. Now, the real question is gentrification and the impact on housing costs and prices for folk in this room. Okay, so if you got a real issue with housing issues, you should do the Legislative Audit Council be conducting a housing audit for these students. And what are their parents dealing with in terms of housing from 1970 to 2010? That should be on their table immediately in terms of all the decisions you're making in redevelopment. You have a mayor's election right now, raising $1 million for a mayor's election, $1 million. You in TIF districts right now, the gentrified neighborhoods that these kids live in. You've got money in these districts right now. You forfeited tax dollars for these students to help developers get rich. So what we need to be talking about is money all the time, not some of the time. It's all about money in the end. And so African Americans have been subjected to this type of bigotry and bias since we got off the boat before the museum was built for $100 million. So we got to be about the business of money and dollars and protracted concerns for those folk who are the least of in these communities. I submit this for the record. My Supreme Court documents I received today from Susan Frumprong and Scott S. Harris, the clerk court for the Supreme Court of the United States of America. This is for the record for me. This is my concern moving forward about dollars and dollars only. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Marsha Alim, Jimmy Moore, and then Charles Glover.
We, the residents and former students of Charleston County Constituent Board District 23, make the following petition to the Charleston County School Board of Trustees. We request the Charleston County School Board retain Minnie Hughes Elementary School open in its present location. We request the Board of Trustees provide Minnie Hughes Elementary School with the financial, faculty, curriculum, and technological support that will ensure that it continues to provide excellent education to the residents of Constituent District 23. Charleston County School Board has a history of revitalizing cities throughout the county through your participation in tax incremented financing, or TIF. Deferring over $13 million in tax revenue, funds that should be used on the students, but instead is used throughout the city of Charleston, bringing us Mount Pleasant Town Center, the brand new Harris Teeter Shopping Complex on San Wittenberg Boulevard, Duck Donuts, Ulta Beauty. We ask for the same revitalization efforts in District 23. Bring us those millions of dollars and help us revitalize the instructional staff. Bring us more certified teachers. Fund another early childhood education class. Build out the technological infrastructure. Give us these and other resources to help our students achieve academically. You have a duty to serve your constituents and not the city of Charleston in its revitalization efforts. I stand before you with 1,094 signatures asking you to keep Minnie Hughes open. Figure this out.
Next is Jimmy Moore, Charles Glover, and then Representative Robert Brown.
Yes, I stand before you tonight to speak on child safety. Our children are rising too early in the morning to stand at the bus stop, and so much danger is there. Waiting at the bus stop that early in the morning, too many things are happening. Rapists are lurking at that hour, murderers. The distance that the children have if they're going to be bused to another school, if you close out a school, the distance that they have to travel, the traffic, accidents and stuff like that happen. I want to say one thing about the matrons on the bus. As far as I know, I'm new in town. As far as I know, we don't have matrons on the bus for our young kids. And we can ride down the street right now, and the police will give us a traffic ticket for not having a seatbelt on. Do we have seatbelts on the buses for the kids? No, we don't. So the seating, you know, the kids getting up too early for that. They need their studies. They need time, you know, to study and learn. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the Superintendent, Board Chair, I stand before you for District 23 to acknowledge that I know that the 2020 referendum is coming up. I just want you to know that District 23 will not support that referendum. We will not vote for the 2020 referendum. Why? Because we are already being shortcutted. Our legs are being cut from under us when it comes down to funding. We can't get what we need to educate our kids, but then you get an $18 million downfall, nobody can give an account for the money. So why is it that you all are walking around with $100,000 budget or pockets, money in your pockets, but then our kids can't get a nickel? So my thing is for you, District 23 is concerned, we want what's due to us. If it takes us to March here in Charleston, we lost a lot of loved ones here in Charleston due to the Manual 9. If it takes us to get our bishop and all the churches that are in Charleston, South Carolina, we will march to keep this school open. We do have people that's in high places, whether we can do it here at the state level or we take it to Washington to Jim Clyburn. We're not backing down, we're going forward. We're tired of being cut short of what belongs to us. Give us our 40 acres and a mule. Give it to us. This past due. And we will march. If it takes us to march in Charleston, in Columbia, that's what we have to do. It doesn't matter to turn back the hands of time, to go back to the 60s and the 50s. If that's what it's going to take, we will close our district. The State Department of Education will come down because nobody will be in school to be educated. We will march. All for one, one for all.
Reverend Mack, I think we need to let Representative Brown speak as long as he wants.
Yes, because we really do need to talk about some of this funding that we're going to need your help with.
Yeah. only if you give me some help.
Okay.
Good evening to Chairman Mack, school board members, and staff. I'm here to speak.
Pause the time clock, please. Just pause the time clock.
It's Andy.
Oh. I am here to speak against the proposed closing of Minnie Hughes Elementary School. Looking at the data, it's easy to see that low enrollment is a good reason to consolidate schools, to cut operating costs, and to give students the opportunity for a better education. But in the rural communities, you must give a lot of consideration to travel time, safety, and protection of our children and the community itself. Right now, I am asking this school board, before you take any action on consolidating Minnie Hughes School and E.B. Ellington School, to ask your staff to give you the data on the closing of C.C. Blaney Elementary School and R.D. Schroeder Middle School. Both are in District 23. We want you to ask questions like, did they close the achievement gap? How much money was saved in operating costs? Are students reading at grade level? How much have their test scores improved? How strong were their principals and teachers? And the most critical question of them all is, are they putting our children in harm's way by having them being at the bus stop 5:30 to 6:30 a.m. in the morning, in the dark, and dropping them off at after 5 p.m. in the dark. We want to know what has to be done to keep our children out of harm's way. Predator lurks in the dark, and the automobile drivers can hardly see our children at the bus stop in the dark in the morning. You know, the truthful answer to these questions will prove that there is very little to no benefit to the district, to the student, nor the community if in closing these schools. In other words, closing these schools, we don't see very little district or none, very little benefit or none at all in closing these schools. So we do not need a third school to close in District 23. In the past, the fight to save our schools have been moderate. But this time, the third time, the District 23 Education Improvement Committee will be very aggressive in keeping Minnie Hughes School open. We are going to fight in this boardroom, we're going to fight in the courtroom and the ballot box. Our children deserve a good education without jeopardizing their safety and protection. If there's a problem at Minnie Hughes, fix it, but don't close it. We have enough schools closed in District 23 already. Now I guess you have some questions, and I'll take your questions.
No question, but
No
we
question?
thank you.
No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I must say, I noticed that the referendum coming up in 2020, it's to help all of the schools in the district. And trust me, I love to support the school district, but there's no way I can support you when you're building schools in other communities and closing a school in mine. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Next is Margie Washington, then Brenda Bowman, and then Edna Nesbitt.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like the Charleston County School District to listen to only a few of Minnie Hughes Elementary School accomplishments and reason why you should not close our school. 1, for 7 consecutive years, Minnie Hughes has made adequate yearly progress. 2004, 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 2, Minnie Hughes has received the South Carolina Department of Education Closing the Achievement Gap Award for 3 consecutive years, 2006, 2007, and 2008. Minnie Hughes was also recognized for moving the border and receiving that award in 2007. In 2010, Minnie Hughes was one of the top Title III schools in the state, and a finalist as a South Carolina Distinguished Title I School for Student Achievement. And last but not least, the Child Development Program currently at Minnie Hughes Elementary School served as a model for Charleston County School District. Thank you for your continuing support for Minnie Hughes Elementary School and their families.
Thank you. Next is Brenda Bowman, Edna Nesbitt, then Tiffany Smalls.
Good evening. Over the past few years, 2 of our local schools have closed with little or no community involvement or input. Our schools are the lifeblood of our community and a source of great pride. As a result, our students have to go outside of the local area to other public, chartered, or private schools for a shot at a decent education. They should have the opportunity to receive that education in their home school. As it stands, Minnie Hughes is the only elementary school in District 23 with an average performance rating on the South Carolina School Report Card. Why would it make sense to close the highest performing school in the district and bus the students to a lower or below average performing school? Minnie Hughes is the highest performing elementary school, and it's the only option for our local families. The local school, especially Minnie Hughes, has contributed to the production of some very talented citizens. We have doctors, lawyers, engineers, military officers, some of which are here tonight to support us. From humble beginnings, these students were taught and nurtured in this community, and today they make us so proud. Why wasn't the public better informed from the very beginning about meetings and the proposed plan to close our school? And why are meetings held at a time when it's so difficult for working parents to get here? Our local schools have been neglected for too long. Why hasn't the district allocated more resources to help improve our schools? What's the message you're sending to District 23? Is it that our children doesn't matter, or you don't care about them? You're seeking to force families to seek other options. You're obligated to provide for our children, to provide a decent, free education that's equal to all other Charleston County school students' education. This is not happening in District 23.
Thank you.
My name is Brenda Bowman. The truth is, District 23 has never been treated fairly. When other schools had opportunities for programs that will allow their students to go to work, District 23 was denied those same programs, and we had to make other arrangements or other options. John Graham Altman at one point went as far as to say that District 23 was brain dead. Imagine that, a community brain dead. In recent years, you closed our middle school. You closed C.C. Blaney Elementary School with the promise that it would reopen as a magnet school. That has never happened. You took the best fifth graders from Minnie Hughes. You sent them to E.B. Ellington with the promise of a magnet program, never funded, never staffed. Now you wish to close the one performing school in our district because of low numbers? Well, surveys show that smaller schools and rural communities work. They are especially poor income communities. Minnie Hughes is in an opportunity zone, which allows tax breaks for businesses and other opportunities for money to be provided to our school, yet you wish to close our school. What is the advantage of relocating our children from a performing school to a non-performing school? What is the advantage? The truth is, Charleston County School Board, the District 23 School Board is sick and tired. We're sick and tired of being mistreated, misjudged, overlooked, and we are not gonna take it anymore.
Now, help me keep up with where I am. Are you Tiffany Smalls?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then after that, after Ms. Smalls is Reverend Charles Hayward and Kashawn Mitchell. Okay, thank you.
I'm Tiffany D. Smalls, parent, family, community advocate for the rural area. We do not want our kids piled in one school to meet enrollment of 500 students. There are several schools like ours in North Charleston with 500 plus students and have all the resources and are still failing. We understand there are schools with 2 certified teachers in the classroom and are still failing. The Early Head Start program in our neighborhood is a very successful and helpful tool with grandparents who are taking care of parents due to being in a rural area where parents have to work. We are a rural neighborhood and we want our schools to reflect small town feel. We do not want our urban area to be an inner city school in our rural community. The agenda is not about diversity. It is about the refusal to acknowledge and embrace our culture. The district and state inequity has affected many schools in our rural area. The education promised to the disenfranchised was minimally adequate. African Americans and kids of all nations and nationalities can learn together, and this is why we are fighting for many hues. We are one of the last guiding lights for our community. We are willing to support CCSD, but not in regards to closing our school. We are ready to take this fight all the way to the State House and to Washington if need be, to save many hues in schools like ours across the nation. The schools closing are destroying our communities. Where you say you work for the people, you work for the students, and they are the priority, you have failed us as a whole. You continue to fail us year after year. Look at the epidemics of what many hues have progressed. Look at everything stating in what you say the reason why you're closing the school. Many hues has met all of your requirements.
Thank you.
Can I have that 30 seconds?
Can you have her 30 seconds? She talked
Before you
pretty
start the
fast,
clock,
so.
it's very, I trust that everybody sensed the difficulty of being forced to these 2 minutes because we are late arrivals to the process. And we speak at, 4,000 minutes, words a minute. But to the board, on behalf of the children and grandchildren of District 23, I stand to ask that you reverse your decision to close Minnie Hughes Elementary School. The history of closing schools in and service to the African American community is a painful legacy. House Bill number 2639 passed in the Senate and House of Representatives in South Carolina and became law on April 1st, 1835. The law made it illegal to teach any slave or free person of color to read or to write. That spirit of not educating African Americans still lingers over this board and your work. The issue of race is always in the room. It is my prayer, Mr. Chairman, Reverend Collins, Mr. Hollins-Shedd, Ms. Green, that you have some measure of relationship and influence with members of your colleagues, that this issue of budget adjustment will not fall on our babies at Minnie Hughes Elementary School. We want to affirm your authority, your responsibility for the whole of the school district. But we appeal to you to exercise them in the spirit of compassion and the privilege that you have in educating our babies. They deserve fairness towards their education and their safety. We are aware that your decisions are often made in executive session long before you bring these sensitive issues before the public. It will take some courage to publicly change your vote that you may have taken in the private session. But considering our babies, we ask that you would have that kind of courage. Again, I appeal to your sense of fairness and justice. Give District 23 a reversing of your decision. Make a financial investment in our babies. Do so by remembering that you have the privilege of helping us prepare our babies for the future. Keep Minnie Hughes Elementary open.
Next is Kashawn Mitchell, Sarah Phillips, and then Natalie Bennett.
Hello. I'd like to take this time to piggyback off of the comments that were made previously and provide some specific details. To put this in perspective, just want to ask a quick question. Do any of you know how far it is to travel from 75 Calhoun Street to E.B. Ellington School?
Yeah.
And that's 17 miles. 17 miles. No one transports their children from downtown to E.B. Ellington. Do you know the distance from the McKinley-Washington Bridge going towards Edisto? That's where the E.B. Ellington zone begins. So to have students leaving McKinley-Washington Bridge to E.B. Ellington School is 23 miles. So you're asking kids to travel a farther distance to get to E.B. Ellington than you would have them leaving here to go to E.B. Ellington. Just to think about that. Someone else mentioned the opportunity zone. If you're familiar with the opportunity zone and opportunity funding and tax breaks and everything for investments, Act 388, I think it was made into law around 2006. In past years, our district was neglected because we had lower cost houses, mobile homes, things like that did not generate enough resources to your tax base. But now with businesses growing in our area and most of the revenue coming from increased property taxes, vehicle registration taxes, and businesses, I ask that you take that into consideration, that the entire opportunity zone outside of North Charleston, the only other opportunity zone is located in Hollywood in the area that covers Minnie Hughes Elementary School. It starts from when you enter Charleston County from Jacksonboro all the way to the bridge, to the McKinley-Washington Bridge going towards Edisto. So if that area is an opportunity zone, we know that we will have additional businesses. We'll also have growth and other things that will contribute to factors that you want to keep the school open. And finally, I ask that you all create a list of things. Obviously, academic achievement is not at the forefront, because the school is outperforming all the other schools. So whatever it is that you guys want to see, you see that you have a willing community here. So why don't you create this action plan and improvement plan, whatever time frame, 3-year, 5-year plan, and present it to the constituent board members, and they give it to the community and give us a chance to fix it ourselves. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sarah Phillips, then Natalie Bennett, and then Larry Kabrowski.
Hi. I'm a Memager parent of a first and third grader, and there are a number of ideas being considered that I have a lot of concern about. And my concerns are intensified because we don't actually have a permanent principal in place right now at Memager. Dr. Woods was a strong leader and advocate for Memager. She went on maternity leave over the summer and decided not to return as principal and instead took another position at the district level. It wasn't a surprise when we returned to school to see an interim principal, but there's been no announcement that Dr. Woods is not coming back and no word mentioned about finding a replacement for her. Now, consider the most recent proposal to move the Buse K-2 students onto the Memager campus, operating as a school within a school. I personally think this is a really bad idea that would only perpetuate the current issues of segregation and inequity, but if it does happen, we would certainly need to have strong leadership at the tops of both schools. Now, I don't know what the long-term plan is in this scenario, but you will have a low-income, high-needs school with no principal, and then you will have Buse in the same school. Now consider the proposal to revoke the partial magnet status from a school like Memager. Only 50% of the current student body is actually zoned for Memager. If the partial magnet status is revoked, Memager's enrollment will plummet and the school will be even more vulnerable to a takeover. So let's say Memager does not host the Buse K-2 as a school within a school, but ends up becoming a partnership school with to be determined. Memager has had a strong working relationship with CFC for several years, but for some reason CFC is not proposing to partner with any D20 schools, and I just think that's weird. I don't know what the story is there, but if Memager is partnered with some other TBD college, nonprofit, or whatever, then how do we maintain our school culture? And how do we keep all of our super talented teachers through something like that, especially without a strong leader in place? So why not actually merge Buse and Memager and make it a partial magnet open to those that can see the value in racial and socioeconomic diversity and can see beyond test scores as the only way to measure success? All right. I guess
You
that's
can finish up what you're saying.
Okay, I'll finish reading. Why not engage the teachers and counselors at the 2 downtown IB schools that are located about 6 blocks from each other and see if they could figure out a way to make an actual merger work between the 2 schools? They are the ones who know whether the students are capable and what supports they would need to thrive. So I can't say whether this is intentional or not, but all of these ideas seem to be setting Memager up for failure, and I just want to avoid having to have Memager show up like Minnie Hughes has.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm coming as a North Charleston teacher and a parent to discuss the proposed changes to CCSD schools. I see the desperate need for change each day in my classroom and in my neighborhoods, and want to support your changes. But these plans change week to week and are not clearly communicated to us. I am truly concerned the board plans to vote in November on plans that are missing clear implementation details and vetted research impacts. Due to time constraints, I can't list them all here, but I believe some areas we as parents and teachers deserve to know more details with enough time for us to review are: how are you planning to revise the student selection process for Boost, and how can that be vetted in 7 days? With accelerated schools, you mentioned, with the acceleration schools, you mentioned greater autonomy for greater results. We need exact details of what this autonomy we are giving away might be. How will you revamp gifted programs to get the 5% at each school? Are you using more money, or are we lowering or changing standards? For the academic magnet program, you mentioned targeting the 2.5% of students in 6th grade to ensure they're ready by 8th grade. How will you know which 6th graders will be will be the top 2.5% in 8th grade, and how can you support them? How will you have a K-2 Boost within Meminger? Are you merging the programs together, or will they be separate? And if they're separate, how can that be best for anyone? And how will you get community feedback for any and all of these proposed changes with only 1 week turnaround? Change is needed, and some of these proposals may work, but clear details and more research needs to be done and shared with parents and the community before a vote is shared takes place. Please listen to the community and teachers. As a CCSD teacher, you ask for excellence from me each day in my classroom and from my students. I'm asking for the same from you before you implement any of these changes.
Thank you. Next is Larry Kabrowski, then Stacia Hugie, and Natasha Jefferson.
All right, thank you. I've been where you are. I was a member of the Charleston County School Board, a member of the State Board, and a member of the State Board again. And I lived here for 40 years. What's most unique about Charleston County is we're 100 miles long from McClellanville to Edisto. And in that, we have rural communities, and part of your job is to help preserve the diversity of our communities. And I ask you to actually go down to Adams Run and Parker's Ferry. These are unique communities. These people have lived there for generations. In fact, Willtown Bluff was founded in 1685, one of the earliest communities in Charleston County. And you have the Ace Basin. It's a beautiful part of our county. And the long arc of things you've built, and I was a proponent of the academic magnet and the School of the Arts. Go to that campus. How many tens of millions of dollars did you build for a few students? And you're going to go down and tear down a school in Parker's Ferry and Adams Run. They love their children just as much as everybody else in our county does. And I've heard what you're proposing, and what I heard was to lower standards, to get in the academic magnet, draw kids away from neighborhood schools. That's not going to help, that's going to hurt. I don't see, and then you're going to save money by dumping on the poorest and most defenseless parts of our community. I live on Sullivan's Island. You rebuilt the school there at how much money? My kids went there, I loved it. You wouldn't dare do to us at East Cooper and Sullivan's Island what you're proposing to do to people who have no voice and can't fight back. I'm honored to say that I've been retained to fight this in court. I hope you make the right decision and don't do this to the schools there. Study the school report cards. In fact, at the South Carolina school report card for 2018-2019 showed substantial improvements at many U's and almost twice the level about students being prepared from 1st to 2nd grade and 2nd to 3rd grade at UB Ellington. Don't solve your problems on the backs of the people in Parker's Ferry and Adams Run. They love their children as much as anybody in Charleston County, and you deserve to maintain the uniqueness of Charleston County. All over our state, poor and rural communities are dissipating from lack of infrastructure. You have a school there that people love and want to support. Why would you take that away from them? Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Stacia. Good evening. You probably recognize me. I spoke to you guys a few weeks ago, and it just seems like my problem is not being heard. And again, it's concerning a bus stop. I know y'all have heard a lot of heavy stuff this evening, so it kind of seems like a small issue, but then I thought again, and I realized that, if any child's life is put in danger unnecessarily, it is warranted some action. And I just don't understand how the district can agree with the removal of our kids' bus stop from being inside our neighborhood to putting them on Highway 41, a dangerous highway. A bus that has been coming into our neighborhood for years. No incident, no issue. We've had a great bus driver step down because his heart aches seeing those kids get on and on that bus at 6:30 in the morning when it's still dark. Dangerous, okay? And then having to put them off in the evening times. Parents work. They're not always going to be there to get their kids off the bus. So you need the bus stops to be at least within eyesight, for the kids to get home. Okay, 0.7 of a mile is the distance these kids have to walk. And when I first made this request, I was wanting the middle and high school bus to just come in and drive the same route the elementary bus was driving. But instead, they stopped the elementary bus from coming into our neighborhood. Now all of a sudden it's unsafe. Don't they check these bus routes every year? How come our neighborhood was safe this past summer for the review, but overnight, our whole neighborhood's unsafe now for a bus to enter? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, I have spoken with the district, and I was told that they don't like buses backing up. But I know for a fact there's multiple very nice neighborhoods off of 41, buses back up all day. Multiple times. Those kids are practically put off at their doorstep. Why do our kids have to walk 0.7 of a mile? It's not fair. I just ask that you guys please just revisit this issue and please try and work with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha Jefferson, then Tara Lowry, and Tenang Williams. Pass. Okay. Tara Lowry. Okay. And then Tenang Williams. Oh, Sherrysburg? Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Hi, my name's Tara Lowry. I'm a District 20 parent. I also, I've had a kid graduate from Charleston County School District, and I have kids in elementary school. I'm sitting here listening to all these conversations, and y'all are still the same as you were 12 years ago. And that goes back to 40 years ago, and God, probably 100 years ago. You continue to close schools, not open anything up that's good, get rid of neighborhood schools, and you're endangering kids on the highway. I mean, guys, come on. Change is good, but you gotta take care of what you broke. I'm really here because I've requested a FOIA for the financial analysis for District 20. It wasn't done. There isn't one. So I understand that you guys are coming up with all these plans that change week to week, but you've never done a financial analysis. So let me remind you of years ago when there was a request for a financial audit. In October 2015, there was the forensic audit. In 2018, you guys tried to approve a $34 million for a football stadium. And just in April of 2019, you guys were on a fiscal watch. I want to know where our money's going. Every taxpayer deserves to know where our money's going and why it's not going to certain communities. And the fact of the matter is, the CCSD has historically put the African American community on the backside. And as I'm listening here, it's still the same. Exactly. But it doesn't matter about how they change. You guys haven't changed. Whoever changes on the board, it's the same behavior, different players. You guys all need to be better because the fact of the matter is, from the White House down, it's not equal, and things need to be equal, and more money's going to have to be spent for the ones that are disadvantaged.
Okay, thank you for your public comments. At this time now, just want to remind all board members about our upcoming board meeting, November the 11th, the Committee of the Whole meeting. November 18th will be our regular board meeting, and we will have one meeting in December, which will be a joint Committee of the Whole meeting and a Committee of the Whole and a regular board meeting. At this time, I entertain a motion for an adjournment.
It was on consent.
Consent. Yep. So moved. Meeting's adjourned.
So moved. All right, I gotta go.